My mother's treachery and my wife's unwavering support. A family nightmare. I'm grandpa, I'll rob you guys when I want. You wouldn't believe the family drama I've endured, the betrayals, the sheer insanity. It's a saga that starts with a simple act of kindness and spirals into a vortex of manipulation and disbelief. Prepare yourself, because this is a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about family. I snagged a small starter home during the housing market crash, triumph I achieved completely on my own. I lived there for the better part of a decade, a sanctuary of independence, before moving on to a larger home with my now husband. My parents, perpetually yearning to an easier life, desperately wanted that small, low-maintenance starter home. They'd faced foreclosure in the past, a stark reminder that a traditional mortgage was simply out of reach. My dad was retired. My mom didn't work. The financial realities were grim. So, they proposed a solution. They'd rent it from me, and not just any rent, a discounted rate, as still really, in exchange for paying off the remaining $50,000 mortgage with an inheritance. They were sitting on an inheritance boasting a six-figure sum. They painted it as a prepayment of rent, a grand gesture. Their monthly payments would only cover property taxes and insurance, rising only when those costs increase. We formalized the arrangement, meticulously crafting a lease with all the standard clauses, and even had it notarized for good measure. For a while, things were stable, but here's the kicker. I wasn't making a single, solitary dime on that house. Recently, after a minuscule insurance increase, I informed them that the rent would be going up by a grand total of $3. $3 effing dollars. My mother completely lost it. She launched into a tirade, accusing me of being a greedy monster, a money-hungry freak. She threatened to rip out all the landscaping, every single cosmetic change she had made, claiming I owed her everything and that I couldn't possibly evict her because, in her twisted reality, it was her house. She then declared she wasn't responsible for the insurance, despite the lease clearly stating otherwise, and insisted I was trying to swindle her into paying my personal homeowner's insurance. She even vowed that a court would side with her and hand over the entire property. Let me reiterate, we had a notarized lease. They were listed as tenants, and my name was the only one on the deed. My father, equally enraged, demanded to see the bills, convinced I was somehow ripping them off. Keep in mind, this house is a commutable distance from Manhattan. A studio apartment in that area easily goes for $1,500. And this was a house with a large yard for their dog. I could easily fetch $1,000 in rent, even before they moved in. I painstakingly sent them copies of the tax and insurance bills, carefully showing their address, and even went as far as to show them I was discounting their taxes, taking advantage of an early payment discount. Exasperated, I told my dad to do the math, divide the totals by 12, and then told my mom to talk to a lawyer so they could smack them straight. Bizarrely, my father actually seemed to agree with me, because now my mother is threatening to divorce him. Again, she threatens divorce all the time, so I doubt she'll actually go through with it. Story 2. I met my future wife on an online dating app. Sparks flew immediately. The relationship moved at lightning speed. I was in my late 20s, and she turned 30 shortly after we connected. We both knew what we wanted in a partner, and neither of us had any patience for games. I met her parents within a few months, though I was much more hesitant to introduce her to minor decision that would soon prove painfully justified. The problems began almost the second I told my folks I was seeing someone. About 6 months into the relationship, I deliberately delayed the announcement, haunted by the memory of them calling the cops on my last girlfriend. The day I finally broke the news, my brother, my parents, and I were having a seemingly normal dinner at a local Mexican restaurant, making polite small talk. Then, the interrogation began. Innocent questions about my girlfriend. Standard fare. But then, I carelessly let slip that she was Jewish. Oh boy, was that a catastrophic mistake. My parents are hyper-conservative, devout Christians. For years, they've been pushing me to date a girl from our church, a perfectly nice friend, but someone I never saw as a romantic match. They always expected me to marry someone who was, at the very least, Christian. I am Christian to this day, but rarely interact with the church due to some incidents with the priest, and no, not that kind of incident. My dad, without missing a beat, told me I should break up with her. He declared that I was going to marry a Christian girl. End of discussion. Hearing him say that, I was livid. I don't remember the full extent of the conversation, but I know I vehemently stated that I was not breaking up with her. Unsurprisingly, the rest of the dinner was incredibly tense. The next couple of months went about as smoothly as you could imagine, but I thought I was only wearing them down. At some point they invited my girlfriend and I for dinner, and I thought there was finally some progress being made. But no, they got my brother to distract me in another room of the house. They sat down with my girlfriend and explained why she wasn't good for me. They straight up told my girlfriend that she needs to break up with me because I was going to marry a good Christian girl. They even offered to pay her for leaving me, My girlfriend politely told him off and we left. She told me that my dad offered her like $100. So fast forward to November. My family is really big on the holidays, as I know many are, and we have very large extended family gatherings for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I think in my entire life, we had only one of these events. I wanted to go, and I wanted to take my girlfriend to meet the rest of my family. My parents may have had their heads up their asses, but the rest of my family has always seemed really great to me. The event will be at my grandmother's house this year, my mom's mother, with a small gathering for my dad's side the day before Thanksgiving. I talked to my grandmother, who was fine with me bringing my girlfriend as long as she slept in a separate room, because there's no way I'm going to do anything with my girlfriend at my grandma's house. I decided to ask my mum as well, not that I needed her permission, but I'm an optimist and I hope that she would be on board and maybe see my girlfriend having positive interactions with the family. The situation: my mother was resistant at first, mainly because she was still upset that we're getting an apartment together and she did not want to encourage the relationship further, but eventually she agreed. I should also note that I set some very clear boundaries with my mother about conversation for this trip, which she rushed off as unnecessary. I had my guard up nonetheless, so with that we had to my grandmother's city, and frankly the first day is nothing but pleasant. My girlfriend gets to meet both my grandmothers, some of my cousins, and my extended family. We're having a fairly good time, and I think things are going well until my girlfriend and I decide to go to a movie. My brother, who's 5 years older than me, wants to tag along. He rode up with my parents and my girlfriend, and I came up in my car, so my brother has to ride with us to the movie. The three of us sit together and my girlfriend, and I hold hands throughout the movie. It was a fantastic movie and the ending was emotional, so I held my girlfriend. Now, all the cuddles had not sat well with my brother, who was sing. That's when he gets up, and I'll never forget what he said, or the malicious tone in which he said. He said straight to us to bad mom, and dad will never let you marry her. My brother then gets up and jogs out of the theatre before my girlfriend, and I could muster up a response. We just sat there a bit dumbfounded for a few moments. Eventually, the house lights went up in the theatre, and we tried to formulate a plan. I have no idea where my brother is at, but he can't go far considering we drove. That's when I decided to call my folks, considering I have no clue where he is, and I really don't want to talk to him, and to my surprise, my mom sides with me and tells me it's all right if we leave him and he can get an Uber back, and my girlfriend, and who's used to dealing with hoes and children in her job, completely cows him with words. He silently rides back with us and we drop him off. My girlfriend and I go to have dinner by ourselves. At this point we debate on just leaving because nothing good can come after this house. My dad's going to ask what happened, but we decided that my parents themselves have not crossed any boundaries we set, so I will stay for now. But it would not take them long though. That same evening, I was getting ready to watch some Netflix in bed with my girlfriend, and nothing until word was going to happen. As I walk past the living room, my mom calls me in and she complains that I'm not spending enough time with my family. Hearing that, I'm a bit angry at this manipulation tactic from my mom, but I go chat for my grandma. My mom tries to tell me that my grandmother is upset with me at my girlfriend and are planning to move in together before we're married. I decided that my grandma does not need my mom being a piece of her, so I sit on the couch in between the two of them and face my grande. My grandmother and I chat. She is a bit worried about me moving in with a woman while I'm wet, but calmly discuss the situation. She doesn't back down on her objection, but eventually she concedes it's my life, that she likes my girlfriend and she's happy for us regardless, trying to button on the conversation, but I'm physically putting myself between her and my, which is pissing my mother off. Eventually my father sees what's going on and he also butts in. Apparently he can't contain himself, turn off, and he goes off about everything he sees wrong with my relationship. Now I can't remember his exact gripes because I likely tuned them out, but I did call him a coward for talking crap behind my girlfriend's back, and this really pissed him off. So he storms out to fetch my girlfriend. He came back with her and proceeded to scream at her in front of all of us. My grandma was absolutely mortified that this was happening in our house. My son will be Christian, his wife will be Christian, his children will be baptized in our church. You two don't belong together, like the guy was screaming at her. He also basically accused her of trying to steal my inheritance by getting pregnant by me, added some very inappropriate commentary about how he knew my girlfriend was getting older, her biological clock was ticking, and that she was trying to trap me. Throughout the whole tirade, my girlfriend just sat there quietly. Like I said, she's used to dealing with hoes and she's tough as nails. She let him finish. Then my girlfriend turned to my grandma and thanked her for her hospitality before turning back to my father and asking, why did you even invite us here if you were going to act like this? Like this, my dad starts yelling again and says, we did not invite you here, we never would have invited you here. At this point, I just gleefully pull out my phone and show him the conversation I had with my mom as she agreed to invite my girlfriend. My dad could not find his words. He just glared at my mom. At this point, I told him that my girlfriend and I were leaving. It was near 11 o'clock at night, but we packed up the car and left for our hometown. My dad got one more word in before we left. He said you two had better have broken up by the time you got home. Have a long hard thought about your future. You don't belong in my family. He said that while pointing at my girlfriend, to which I just laughed as we got in the car. My girlfriend and I drove home on pure alternating between anger, humiliation and frustration at the whole thing. This story does have something of a happy ending though. In the days that followed, we got a lot of calls and messages of support from my relatives. It turns out my brother made some vague social media posts tell us about how he was sad for me playing and asked everyone to pray for his brother, referring to me. Apparently many of my relatives took this to mean that I had been hurt and they all called my mother and father. When my parents were forced to explain the situation, all of my relatives sided with my girlfriend and me. In the months that followed, this incident caused my grandmother to think back on how she had acted with her on. It turns out my mother's marriage was the only one out of her 3 daughters that my grandma had approved of. This incident made my grandma realize she had acted poorly with her other daughters, and she came to them to finally mend those old wounds. Now I had no idea, as it always seemed like my grandmother and her daughters had a great relationship, but these were old wounds I just scabbed rather than really healed. Overall, my family got a lot closer because of. In addition, my father's attitude has undergone a dramatic change over the course of we almost didn't invite him to our wedding, and my dad ended up being the happiest person there when my girlfriend and I tied the knot. This was helped by the fact that he discovered some underlying mental health issues after Thanksgiving are truly helping him. He started acting like the father I loved when I was a kid. And yes, my dad was probably the worst person in this story, but I can't underestimate just how much he's changed since then. He was so filled with joy, and my wife and I announced that we were going to start trying for a kid after moving into our new house. On the other hand, my mother has not changed. She's still mad about the fact that she can't control my wife, and my mother is still a problem, and boy do I have more stories. She's mostly behaving because she knows my wife, and I can and will block her from seeing her future grandchildren. To all the people who ask why my wife stayed with me through all this, I completely understand where you're coming from sometimes. Even I don't know why she stayed. In the end, I think it all worked out with us together because we're a team. It may have sounded from the way I described the story that I wasn't standing up for her, but my wife and I talked extensively before each encounter with my parents. We set up clear boundaries and worked together as a team. That Thanksgiving night was extremely tense, but we went and prepared for something like that to happen. Additionally, I told my wife that all she had to do was ask and I would cut all contact with my parents, no questions asked. She never got to the point of pulling that trigger, though that Thanksgiving did come close. Story 3. In healthcare, one of the most difficult things to deal with are family members of patients. They are understandably angry, upset, grieving, devastated, and often feel helpless. Most of the time I try to understand this and not get too annoyed when families cause problems, but these parents were on another level. One of my patients was an 18-year-old woman who had a pelvic infection. She got very sick and required to stay in the hospital. She was a dream, open, honest, and a lovely person. Her parents were none of these things. Every single day, they would come in and start demanding this, that, or the other thing from the nurses on the ward. They wanted an extra bed in the room so the mom could stay overnight. They were rude to the student nurse who was doing their daughter's observation, to the point that the charge nurse had to move the student nurse to a different set of patients to get her away from. But when the doctors were around, these parents transformed into the sweetest people you've ever met, right up until we were out of sight or said no to one of their requests. They were disruptive, loud, and generally obnoxious people. Thankfully, their daughter was aware of their crappy behavior, and she informed us that she didn't want them to be told anything about her condition unless she approved it. She was a legal adult, so she was entitled to her privacy. This wasn't a huge issue to begin with, as she had shared most of the details. But then her mom Googled pelvic infections and discovered that sometimes they can be caused by sexually transmitted infection. Cued the dramatic music. As far as her mom was concerned, we had screwed up and gotten the diagnosis wrong. In her words, there was no way her girl had even thought about having sex with a boy. They then demanded to see their daughter's medical records to prove that we were lying about the infection, politely telling them to off was the highlight of mine. Unfortunately, that wasn't the end of it. They came in the next day with legal papers demanding we hand over the medical records. It turns out they had lied to the lawyer, are still under the guardianship of the parents, not a grown-ass woman. When that didn't work, they threatened to see each of us individually. As if that wasn't enough, they tried to bring in some crockpot alternative doctor to examine her downstairs to confirm her purity. Thankfully, their doctor screamed bloody murder when the guy attempted to examine. This resulted in one of the most satisfying moments of my career, watching security guards escort her parents and their so-called doctor off the premises and issued them trespass. Looking back on everything, from the manipulative rental agreement with my parents to the horrific Thanksgiving dinner and the constant challenges at the hospital, I have to wonder, did I handle these situations correctly? Was I too lenient with my parents? Should I have cut them off sooner? Did I do enough to protect my wife and my patient? I'm genuinely curious to hear your perspectives. Tell me what you think. Was I right to try and make things work Or should I have drawn a line in the sand sooner? I'm open to all opinions, so please share your thoughts on how I navigated these difficult family and professional dramas. Your insights could really help me process everything that happened and perhaps handle similar situations better in the future.